We got huge rumors about the PlayStation 6 and a new Sony handheld. There's a lot happening this coming week. I want to share the top 7 things I saw and played at Gamescom. There's a lot of gaming news. So thanks as always for joining these weekly Sunday news roundup videos. And let's go. Let's start with some news stories I want to go over quickly. The Avengers and Tomb Raider studio Crystal Dynamics got hit by layoffs again. This is the third time in 2 years. Something I sadly predicted would happen in a previous Sunday video after we learned that Microsoft had cancelled Perfect Dark a few months ago. Crystal Dynamics was namely also working on this project, but yeah, these developers are likely not needed anymore. They do note that the future of Tomb Raider remains unaffected by this decision. They've been working on this new Tomb Raider game for quite a long time now, and according to rumors, it should be an open world game. It could really be announced at any upcoming event. I can't wait. Let me know your hype levels for a new Tomb Raider in the comments down below. Now let's look at some God of War news and Judas. But first, the sponsor of this video, a game I actually got to play at Gamescom, Gods, Death and Reapers, an action RPG with a very interesting twist. Because in this game, all mythologies are real. They start with the Norse mythology, but will later add the already cool looking Egyptian mythology, the Greek mythology. And we are enlisted by Death and given special powers that are linked to the different weapons that we choose and can switch between. And then we have to go out and face many creatures, get stronger. I encountered a boss at one point, there are dungeons to explore, and then with the loot you find, you want to get out of the map without dying. So there's PvP, but they're also working on a single player and PvE only mode. The game is still relatively early, but the core gameplay already felt really good. I loved how the different abilities had multiple uses that I could figure out. So I'm totally keeping an eye on this, and you can request access as well if you want for free by checking the special link in the video description. That would support the channel as well. So thanks to Wolfson Studio for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back into it. We know that Cory Barlog, the director on God of War 2018, has been working on something big that, according to substantial rumors from Jason Schreier and Bloomberg, is the next big game from Santa Monica. It's not a new IP, but it might feel like one and won't be sci-fi. I speculated before that this could also be a God of War type title, but then God of something else in an attempt to broaden the franchise and also be able to move beyond Kratos. Well, what we now learned is that whether or not Cory's game is God of War related, Sony Santa Monica is still making God of War games. They namely put up a new job listing for someone with experience in in-depth combat systems, mechanics and enemies in one or more third-person melee action RPGs. Yeah, this has to be for a new God of War, right? Ragnarok was in 2022. I'm really curious when we will see their next big thing. Game Awards this year in December has potential. Let me know what you hope from the future of God of War in the comments down below. And also this week we got the first of multiple dev diaries for Judas, the next game from BioShock maker Ken Levine. Once again talking about how we can decide who becomes the villain. So it's a pretty interesting system. There are 3 characters and you can choose who you want to help and spend time with, so they become your friend and will help you out during combat, for example. But the one you ignore will become the villain. So on paper this means there's quite some replayability for a single player game. About the release date though, he said that they are not ready to finalize that yet and only want to share it if they are 100% certain. It has to be 2026, I think, at this point. I'm looking forward to it, like seems to at least be something new and interesting, whether it will work out or not. Next to bring you all the biggest gaming news, I also want to use these Sunday videos to update you on things that I've been doing, like going to Gamescom. So right here, I present you the top 7 things that I saw and played at Gamescom from least exciting to most exciting. Curious to hear your thoughts, of course, in the comments down below. Leave a like, that would really help me out, and subscribe, because we post one of these big gaming news roundup videos every Sunday. On number 7 we find The Outer Worlds. I got a presentation for the game and it was sadly the least exciting thing that I saw. Now sure, you totally noticed that the gameplay has been improved to feel more like a shooter. The indoor area they explored looked pretty interesting, but there was nothing that jumped out. They really focused on skill checks as if they reinvented the wheel, but it just overall screamed AA to me in how the NPCs behave. Your companions appear very lifeless and are just combat AI helping you out. They also said in the trailer, yo, romance are not an option, as if that's a good thing. Like, I did not get a sense for what this game excels at, what makes this special. And they wanted to make this the first $80 game. But yeah, I got sadly less interested. I hope the overall game is of course better. I could play 15 minutes of Dying Light the Beast, and I think it's good to know that this was a Dying Light 2 DLC at first, because it feels like it. They used those solid base mechanics and put them in a far more interesting looking environment. Love the focus on nature and the overgrown elements. It will be nice to immediately have access to firearms that weren't present at the launch of Dying Light 2. And I got to use the very strong flamethrower, which was nice, but I think the story will be very important to push this to a higher level. They got the main character from 1 at least, so I have hope. On number 5 we find Borderlands 4. Just like with Dying Light, I really can't wait to play the full game, but the demo at Gamescom was not that exciting. It was inside a vault. I simply had to kill all the enemies, then a jump pad would appear, then I went to another part of the vault where I once again had to kill all the enemies, and then I could fight a boss. Luckily the boss did show what this new game has to offer, because you could use the new grapple hook to reveal weak points, and later on I also had to use it to avoid the ground that would damage me over time. So there are way more mechanics compared to the older Borderlands games. But I'm mostly curious about the open zones, and I could not experience that yet, although we don't have to wait that long. The game is already out, of course, on September 12th. On number 4, we find Crimson Desert. I will keep this one short because I want to do a full video on this soon. But let's say that I think this game is going to be very special, but I'm also afraid that it will be polarizing and not for everyone, even if you're looking for a big open world game like this. Again, more on it soon. Phantom Blade Zero is number 3. This game plays like a dream. I love how every weapon has its own personality with special finishers, animations, and abilities. It was really cool to actually play a region instead of the boss fights I could try out last year, but I do hope the full game has a bit more exploration, similar to Black Myth Wukong, as the level was very linear. You had a few side paths, but you would very quickly hit a wall and basically revert back to the main path. Still, the combat will carry this game. It was really important to use the right loadout against the different enemies. The boss fights were awesome. We should hear a release date before the end of the year, and if you want more details, Dennis did a full video after playing the same demo in China. I will leave a link to it in the video description. The Blood of Dawnwalker really surprised me, and that's why it's number 2. Again, where the Outer Worlds 2 does not seem to do anything new or exciting, this game from the ex-Witcher 3 veterans is introducing a very interesting mechanic to the open world genre. You can namely tackle the missions during day or night, and then they will play out completely different, because during night you have access to these vampire powers. I saw the developers during the presentation blink across rooftops. You can walk on walls and then get into areas that you cannot get to during the day. While during the day you have to interact with NPCs, maybe help them to get access to the same locations, and then you will go to different parts of the level that you will not see during night. Not to mention that the combat is very different depending on the time of day as well. So I think if they deliver on this, it's gonna be very special. I want to do a react video going a bit more in depth on everything I learned. So check that out during the Monday stream, and I will post that later as well. Link in the video description. And my number 1 is a surprise for me as well. Like, I played the short but very sweet demo of Onimusha Wave the Sword, and it just immediately grabbed me because I really felt in control. I was trying to parry an incoming arrow and it immediately worked. I was instantly reading enemies and figuring out the best way to use my light and heavy attacks to take them out, and then okay, there's a new enemy, how can I counter that one? So it's slower paced, very strategic, and just like the older Onimusha games, you have to collect your souls. So after taking out the enemies, you hold your hand and then get your resources. I totally get the Sekiro comparisons, but this will not be as punishing it seems, and not really be a Souls-like, more an action game, which is totally up my alley. I was also intrigued by the things going on in the world, so totally keep an eye on this game. Back to the news with the rumor roundup, where every week we look at the biggest leaks and I give stars, with 3 being I believe it and 1 being let's take this with a huge grain of salt. And this week we have to talk next gen again. The PS5 will be 5 years old at the end of this year, and usually we get an upgrade 7 years into the generation, and well, 2027 seems to be the year that we at least get 3 new PlayStation consoles, according to a new video from Moore's Law is Dead. I will leave a link to that video in the video description. He goes very in depth on the technical details. I want to go over the highlights right here. So yes, I said 3 new consoles. From left to right, we have a cheaper PlayStation 6 console, a PS6 handheld, and a more regular PlayStation 6 home console, with some very interesting suggested prices from Moore's Law is Dead, all without a disc drive. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second. I want to start with the handheld because yes, Sony is going to enter that space again, but this time it's a machine that can play console games, so they don't have to develop exclusive games for it, which was one of the reasons why the Vita of course failed. So unlike the PlayStation Portal, this new device can run games natively. PS4 and PS5 games should be no problem. The system on paper is actually more powerful than a PS5, so it can likely run the games on a similar level if they are patched for the handheld. But it should also be able to run PS6 games, but likely be stuck at 30 FPS, while regular PS6 games seem to aim for 120 FPS and 4K. The handheld should have a touchscreen and actually a dock as well, similar to the Switch, and docking it should increase the performance a bit too. But the crazy part is that because Sony is using new tech and they can buy it in bulk too, because they will of course sell a lot of it, they should be able to price this handheld at $400 if they want to get aggressive, although $500 is more likely, but they want to keep the cost low to compete with Nintendo and also Valve on the new Steam Deck that, according to new rumors, is coming in 2028. According to documents that Moore's Law got, one core goal of the PlayStation 6 generation is to have people stuck on the PlayStation 4 upgrade. Yes, I said PlayStation 4. In June of this year, we learned that for the first time the PlayStation 5 had more monthly active users than the PS4. So there are still around the 50 million monthly active users on the PS4, and with the PlayStation 6S console, Sony wants to offer a cheaper solution, potentially at $300 or $350, to push those people to finally move over and leave that old hardware with the hard drive, etc. behind. Moore's Law is Dead says that there's no reason for Sony to make a PlayStation 5 after they release a PlayStation 6, because the PlayStation 6 is cheaper to manufacture and will be more powerful. I give 2 stars. I think it's overall very, very interesting, but of course these things can change. What I do believe is that the info he has is correct and that Sony is coming with at least 3 hardware options. More thoughts in the Monday stream on the React channel, link to that in the video description. So that is this coming week, but there's way more. The Summer of Death continues, as this week we have the launch of Hell Is Us. A demo is already out if you are curious about this third-person action game that really wants you to figure stuff out yourself, like there are no quest markers or a quest log. We will get reviews for this very soon. Chronos The New Dawn, the Dead Space Resident Evil inspired horror game from Blooper Team behind The Medium and Silent Hill 2, is launching this week as well. I really hope it turns out well. The Indiana Jones DLC is also dropping, this one on September 4th. And of course, Silksong is finally launching. I'm really curious if it can live up to the hype, but it will at least be huge, with many indie games having already moved out of this week because they know everyone will be playing Silksong. Oh, and by the way, Star Wars Outlaws is also launching on the Switch 2 this week. I'm curious if that will do anything for the game. There are not a lot of other Switch 2 games, so it might. Totally keep an eye on the channel for some interesting videos. No Shadows update this week. It seems to drop on September 9th, 1 week before the DLC on September 16th. We'll of course keep you posted here for everything. September overall is going to be very exciting. I can't wait. So subscribe, a like would be awesome, and check out our recent video by clicking on the screen. I will speak to you very soon. Goodbye.